Welcome, everyone, and Happy New Year. We're so glad you've joined us today for Our Whole Lives Taking Flight. My name is Reverend Amy Johnson, and I serve as the Minister for Sexuality Education and Justice in the United Church of Christ. And I am joined by my owl sister, Melanie Davis.
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. We're so glad that you're with us. I am Melanie Davis. I am the Unitarian Universalist Association's Our Whole Lives Program Manager. Welcome.
Before I introduce our esteemed guest today, I want to remind you that if you have questions today, we really encourage you to use the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen. That helps us track those questions and we can get to them as they come up, or we'll have some time at the end. It's hard for us to manage the chat during the webinar and run the webinar. So if you can use the Q&A feature, that would be really helpful for us. So without further ado, I am going to introduce to you Airlie Anderson. Airlie is the author of Neither, Cat's Seasons, Cat's Colors, and several other children's books, including one that's coming up soon, to be released, called Only, that she'll talk about a little later. She has won the Moonbeam Children's Book Award, the Independent Publisher Book Award, and the Practical Preschool Award. She creates her illustrations using gouache on paper and graduated from the Rhode Island School of Design. Airlie currently lives in New Jersey, but she's coming to us today from California, and you can visit her online at airlieanderson.com. So, Airlie, I'm going to say what I think is on everyone's mind right now, which is, what is gouache?
Hooray! Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Melanie, and thank you, everybody. It's so nice to be here. I have to apologize. The sun came out during that wonderful video, which felt very appropriate for the wonderful quality of that video, but it's making weird light, so sorry about that. But yes, on to one of my favorite topics, gouache, is the paint that I use. It's watercolor, but it's opaque watercolor. So you can get these very saturated surfaces with it. Makes very bright colors. And the texture, oh, there it is, Melanie's holding it up. The texture, you can make it all brushy, or it's pretty flexible, but you can get a very bright tone with it. So that's why I like using it. I've used it since I started using it in high school. And it was like, ever since then, I just didn't want to stop using it. So I like to tell people that we're married because we will always be involved, I think. So
I think Melanie and I can attest to, it's good to do what you love. I think that's a good thing.
yes,
Airlie, there was a funny comment in the chat that somebody said, apparently closed captioning doesn't understand the word gouache.
Oh.
No, yes. Yeah, I would imagine that that's true. Yes. So a lot of people say, well, try to branch out, use different media, maybe experiment. And every time I do that, I think, no, I like that. So I'm going to go with it as long as I want to. Yeah, gouache. So I started using it in high school, and maybe that's a good segue into kind of my little story of artwork and reading. I was one of those kids with the crayons that was always drawing everywhere I went. I would bring art supplies with me to places even that you maybe shouldn't do artwork, like on a backpacking trip. I remember we did that when I was pretty little, and my parents said, are you sure you want to bring, your book that you're making? I think, we were going on a little hike, and I was about 8. And I said, yes, I want to make my turtle book. And my parents, to their credit, let me bring everything. And then we would take a little break, and I would make my book, and then we'd be on our way. So I've been doing this for a long time, and it's always been my dream to make stories and draw things to go along with them. And I used to want to be an animator for Disney. That was sort of how I saw myself, other than making books. And then once I got to college, I realized that the process of animation wasn't my favorite, and I didn't have that love for being in a dark room and doing things over and over, which takes this certain kind of patience. and tenacity for that. And it just wasn't what I didn't feel about it as I thought I would. So I stuck with picture books. And in college, I majored in illustration and started making books right away after I graduated, books for myself. And then I started to try to figure out how to get published. So that was my journey. But along the way, it's been a lot of sketching and a lot of reading of other books. I do read books that don't have pictures in them sometimes. Yes, so now I live in New Jersey, and I am in California right now. That's where I'm originally from, hanging out with my dad and the rest of my family. So that's it, and I'm so glad to be here chatting with everybody. I love this message that we're carrying. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Airlie. And one of the reasons we asked Airlie here today is because she wrote the book Neither. And then we had this whole side conversation about if you say neither or neither. So however you say that word, you are welcome here. Neither is a book that Airlie wrote, and that is now part of the second edition of the K-1 curriculum. And it was chosen by the authors and by us because of its beautiful message about non-binariness and not having to fit into a box. I would love, that's why we chose it. I'd love to hear from you, Airlie, and if I know you can't read the whole thing, but because we're recording and stuff, but if you have parts you'd like to show us or let us know what inspired you to write it and what your process was around that and what you had in mind, we'd love to hear about that.
Yes, absolutely. So here it is. Now it's gouache glory. Neither or neither. Maybe I'll start with the beginning and then I can skip to the end. Okay, it starts like this. Once upon a time, there were two kinds, this and that. These and those. One or the other until you gotta see the egg there.
I love that little egg down there.
And I tried to make, yes, there's the egg. And I tried to make the trees also. The trees are binary in this world of this and that. So, wow. And so are the flowers. So I try to make everything just, two kinds. Honk. So it goes on to talk about neither. And then the difficulties that arise with neither not fitting into either category. And neither arrives in the land of all, which little readers really like this part because they also ask me why there's an eyeball there, to which I respond, why not put an eyeball in there? My editor also asked that why you putting an eyeball in there. So then neither fits right in there because there's no one else like them in the land of all. And then one more part, which is probably the favorite page, I would say, of everybody, or most people who read this really get into this one, I should say. Oh, we're welcome. And I wanted to make sort of a Where's Waldo kind of jam here, where you look for the things and you can find them. And this is a nice, also at bedtime, they kind of search and get sleepy maybe. So
yeah. Those little details are so fabulous because it engages readers, like adults and children, in finding things and not just like racing through it to get to the end and now it's lights off, but really interacting. I'm curious about how what's in your brain when you say, I'm just going to put an eyeball there?
Well, the eyeball is an interesting story because people would ask me that, and I would say, I don't know. The creative process is mysterious and mystical, and I'm not sure where that came from. But then later, I looked in my studio and had a little cup. It was a cup that had an eyeball right on it, and it was right there as I was making everything. So it just reminds me that I have to sort of be mindful of the objects that I surround myself with when I'm making stuff, because it will end up somehow, subliminally or not, in the picture. Yes.
Oh,
so other than that, I think that's the answer to that question of where do you get these ideas? Is it that it just comes from everywhere? Everything that I'm doing and reading and looking at and talking to other people about, it all influences what comes out when I'm drawing or writing.
I'm curious. I just have so many things. I love your book so much.
Thank you.
I told you, I was in an email conversation we were having when we were setting this up. I said, I keep buying it because I keep giving it away. I'll go to a church to deliver a sermon and they'll ask me for a children's message. And, a lot of times I'll bring that, and then the kids love it so much, I just leave it there. And they ask questions and they want to know, oh, is that a cat butterfly? And is that a, bee fish, and all those kind of things. And kids of many ages. So not just really little kids, but kids well up into elementary school. And as we were speaking right before this, even adults really love the book. I think another thing that I had such a lens about the trans non-binary frame that I was surprised this summer. I was co-leading a family camp, and we were reading the book to the whole group. And there was a little girl there who happens to be biracial, and she kept coming up to me, asking me to read her that book like throughout the week. And she wanted to name every single creature on the page. And what is that? And what is that? And what is that? And I hadn't thought about that lens before either. And so now she went home with a copy of the book. So lots of people are getting this book from Amy. But I would love to know about what inspired you to create that book. What were you thinking about when you decided to create it?
Well, first of all, I love hearing stories of people who connect with this book and it resonates with them, and hearing about people looking at each character and wanting to know and taking it home. That just really makes my day. And when I was doodling, I usually doodle a character. When I come up with a book, it's usually about this one character, and then everything else kind of builds around that, or a title even. This book came to me with the title actually in a dream. It sounds sort of unbelievable, but it came to me in a dream. And I gave the book to one of my students at the time. I was teaching in middle school, and I had this dream. In my dream, though, the character was the cat butterfly was neither. But I made the decision. Let me see if I can find the cat. Made the decision to make neither. So in my dream, it was, fun fact, was actually this one. But for what I ended up wanting, it was something a little more funny, or I don't know how to describe the quality that neither has. Someone who would say honk and bring that kind of energy to it. The butterfly cat was so cute that I sort of wanted something a little different feeling than that. So in my dream, it was the cat, but the book was called Neither. And at the time, I was teaching these middle schoolers, and they were just coming up with so many beautiful ideas for combination creatures. And we were doing this combo creature project, and they really opened my mind to the story, I think, because they were just so, as middle schoolers are, they had this ability to be funny, but also very, very sincere about what they were making. So that's where it came from. But also there, as I was saying before, it's a little it's a little mysterious where the actual literal idea comes from. It's kind of from all over the place.
I
hope
love
that
that.
answered.
I love that there's mystery about it, because sometimes things can become formulaic.
Mhm.
We try so hard to just, I have to write this to fit in this specific scenario or this, story for this purpose. And the fact that it came to you in a dream is really lovely.
Yeah, it did. And it's was that the whole question? I'm trying to remember the other parts of the question. Were you talking about the lens of it, or?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, did you have in mind, was it just like the fraughtness of middle school, or or was there a binary aspect to it when you created it, or
So what I
there's
was
lots of
hoping
rainbow
for,
colors in there, so
yeah, yeah, I think what I was hoping for is that lots of people might resonate with a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. That's what I was hoping for. It wasn't lost on me that the theme really felt very much like non-binary, not a non-binary theme. But I also was hoping that that it would resonate with a wide range of people, which I think it has. So when people told me that they felt seen when they read it, especially I think overwhelmingly with in regards to gender, I was very touched by that, because I just, it was something that I was hoping people would resonate with people, but you never know. And so when I started getting emails from people saying, I've never seen a book like this before, those kinds of things were really amazing. I was just very pleased that it was resonating with people.
I think the idea, and Amy said that she's given away copies. Kat Good in the comments has bought 5 copies already. I think that in a time where schools and libraries are feeling pressure to remove books from their shelves, there can be this passing of resources among people outside of those organizations that can get these words out to the children and youth who need to hear them and be supported.
Absolutely. And I hope that it's something also that's sort of a springboard for other conversations. So it's not explicitly mentioned in the book. So it's not messagey, but it's something that people can see something in it and talk about it with their grown-ups or with their peers or whatever.
yeah, or even just like representation matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
To people to be seen, like you said, you're receiving that feedback. Have you had any negative feedback, or anybody wanting to ban your book or those kind of things?
Yeah, definitely. At first, it was sort of under the radar because, as you were saying, Melanie, it was sort of passed between librarians and word of mouth. It started out sort of slow roll with the sales. It was, but it was a lot of people telling each other, "Oh, you got to read this book," and so I didn't get a lot of public opinion about it. At least I wasn't aware of it at first, but recently it's been either questioned or banned in certain places. And I did get some online. I was in this big troll fest, which was not fun, but they were saying that I was indoctrinating people with my message by going around to schools, and that was really weird for me because I think that even though it definitely has a non-binary theme to it, I would think people would be a little more open-minded to this, because I would hope that even people who don't identify as non-binary would find something to enjoy or learn from this book. So it was very odd and very disturbing. So, and also I know that they didn't read it.
Well, they very often don't. I
thought, well, at least read it. So
I think that in my mind, I'm thinking if you have a group of kids where everybody's sort of behaving in a sort of age typical, developmentally typical way, but then you have somebody who is maybe has behavioral issues or is neurodivergent or whatever, and it could apply there too. Or I'm thinking when I grew up in Northern California, and everybody around me was Christian and I was a Unitarian. And I would have loved this book for that purpose. You know, there are so many applications for this that have nothing to do. I mean, yes, of course, we want to support trans kids, and the application for this are endless, really.
Thank
Yeah.
you for saying so, Melanie. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think too that one of the advantages that we have as faith communities, either UUA or UCC or any other denomination or faith practice, is that, you know, we can bring the book in. You know, it doesn't need to be banned from our churches. We can bring it in and read it and expose kids to it, and the pieces of our faith that talk about both of our faith practices, the UU and the UCC, that talk about inclusion of everyone, and the message. You know, as a Christian, I would say, you know, that's a gospel message. You know, it really is, and so that probably isn't why you wrote it, to be like a Sunday school book, but you know, it does. I think it preaches that very well, very well. So
Thank you, Amy.
I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about other books that you've read and how you've been inspired to write them as well.
Oh, other books that I've written.
Written.
So
Read.
I was trying to read. Right now I'm reading Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. So that's I'm sometimes I think, well, that doesn't have anything to do with what I'm writing, but as I was saying before, of course it will, because it's going to be the grown-up books that I read probably infuse into the picture books that I write. But my other books have been sort of less fable-like than neither, such as Cows in the Kitchen was one of my first ones that I did with a wonderful publisher called Child's Play, and it's sort of a song book about cows, and that's just pure fun and, you know, bonding time with little kids who may tear pages out of books, so it's made out of cardboard. So that's, you know, that's another form of book that I like to make, just baby books. And then Cat's Colors. Cat's Colors is interesting because sorry, spoiler alert, but the cat goes around and I'm sorry, I don't have a copy with me, but she, as she looks at different elements of nature, a spot of color will appear on her in different places. So she looks at some green leaves and she gets a green spot. She looks at the blue pond and she gets a blue spot, and a purple butterfly, she has a purple spot, etc. And then at the end, she sort of disappears and no one knows where she went. And when we find her, she has a litter of rainbow kittens. So at the time, that was sort of a purely visual kind of decision, because I knew I wanted some kind of white animal that turned into different colors. Visually, I wanted to express that somehow. But it is funny, though, sometimes I read it, especially well, the little kids seem to accept. Yes, she went around and saw colors, and now she has a litter of rainbow kittens. But if I read that book to some older children not that long ago at a school visit, and they said, well, what is this supposed to mean? You know? So I don't know, maybe that could spur some reproductive conversation. It doesn't happen that way, but you know, I don't know. But mostly it was just, I thought I wanted to express sort of the creativity, the creative spirit that we receive when we're in nature, maybe. So that's a whole other can of beans. But
I love
and
that.
then there's the sequel, is Cat's Seasons. So they sort of learn about the seasons, and the kittens change colors with the seasons. So they play in the snow and they all turn kind of icy blue. And then at the end, I won't spoil that one for you. You'll have to see for yourself.
Well, you said
The sales are going to spike after this webinar.
well, you said that you weren't interested in animation. That would so beautifully lend itself to animation.
Yeah.
Yes, I would love to see that.
You also told us you have a new book coming out. Yes. Can you tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that one?
Yes, I have a new book coming out. It's not released yet, but it's in the vein of Neither. It's not exactly a sequel. It's sort of in the same universe of Neither. It's called Only: The Bird Who Liked Being Alone. And it's about a little red polka dotted bird named Only who likes being alone, but maybe discovers that they don't like to be alone all the time. So it sort of sprung from a feeling during lockdown that I had, because I'm not exactly an introvert. I'm sort of a neither in that regard. I'm introverted sometimes, but then other times I like, I definitely I like to go and socialize. I need that. So I realized during lockdown that I actually really like being around big groups of people sometimes. And when we didn't have that opportunity, it really changed something inside me. It made me realize I need this. I need to be able to go to a really noisy place and see people doing what they do. And so I thought, how do I turn that idea into a picture book? So then I started working on it during lockdown, and then and now it's going to be published, which is very exciting because you never know when something is going to be accepted and published. There's a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall, to see which, what sticks. There's a lot of making drafts of things and doesn't really work out, or maybe it comes back later, a draft of a book that I made. I might present it again years and years later. So that's kind of what happens with that. But Only will be a book, yay, in February. February 5th.
Many years ago, I went to a writers' conference, and they had an agent there who said, if you're writing a children's book, you want to write it, but leave it to the publisher to come up with the artist, because that's the way it's done. But you're doing both, right? So how do you get around that sort of process of, no, let the publisher pick the art?
Yes, so it's a little different with an author illustrator combo because they're sort of inextricable. At least for me, once I have the idea, I'm writing with pictures. I'm putting the words maybe second. I might make the book entirely with pictures first and then add. So they're sort of, they don't come apart for me. I tried to write manuscripts as if the author and illustrator were different people and not me, not just all me. And that didn't really work very well. So I found out through years of trial and error that I really write them together. But it is true that publishers usually want the ability to pick the illustrator. They feel that they usually want to have control over that part. There are exceptions to that, though. Sometimes a writer can specify, no, I would really like this illustrator for this work. But usually when if you're submitting an idea to a publisher, it's a good idea just to submit the manuscript. And then later, if you really feel strongly about an illustrator you would like, then you can put in a word for that. But usually you just submit the words first.
I can see how you can't tease yours apart.
Yeah.
Because the words, the message and the art is so intrinsic that process makes a lot of sense for you.
How long does it take from, like, do you pitch ideas to different publishers? Do you have what publisher that you work with? And how long does the whole process take?
It takes forever. Well, no, I shouldn't say it like that, but it's I have two publishers that I work with usually. My first publisher that I worked with is called Child's Play, and they're a smaller publisher. They're based in the UK, but they have offices here in the US as well. And I found them through an agent that I had at the time. I don't have an agent right now, but I have found work through agencies before. And we worked together on the cat books and the cows books. And then when I had the Neither idea, I decided to pitch it to a bigger publisher, Little Brown. So Little Brown is part of Hachette, and so it takes a while because the editors have to, and an editor has to sort of fall in love with the idea, my editor, and then she will pitch it to the rest of her group and try to convince them that it's also a good idea to publish. So we have to wait for it's called an acquisitions meeting. So they will meet and they'll discuss whether they think it's going to fit in with the rest of their catalog. So it can take 6 months just to get through, from submitting to getting a yes. And then after you get the yes, it takes probably about a year for me to create all the artwork and get it all, finalized. And then after that, it probably takes another 6 months for them to make it and then for it to arrive. So it takes a while, not forever, but it takes a while.
That's interesting that you say 6 months, because that's our formula too.
Yeah.
When we submit a manuscript for like a revision of
Okay.
owl level, we submit it to our final manuscript to the UUA's publications department, and it takes about 6 months for it to be formatted and typeset and ready for publication. And it can be frustrating. I'm sure it's frustrating for you too, because you want to see your finished book. People wonder, why does it take so long? But there is just a lot involved in the process of pagination. And in your situation, I imagine just getting the colors that you put on the paper to come through in the printing, that's got to be an art in itself.
Oh, definitely. And the people who are in charge of that are really amazing. They know how to sort of, they see it in this very granular way. We need to add this and this for the ink to look right. They ordered a special ink because I was using this very vibrant green and it wasn't really printing well. So they got an extra special ink. So and all the graphic designers that work on it and make sure that this isn't too close to the edge, all those people doing all those things make it look, make it, the graphic designer who worked on this decided to put this little tiny Neither on the spine, those kinds of details. I just, I love that.
Yeah.
So it does take a while, but it is, like you're saying, Melanie, it is, we know why it takes a long time.
I think also another piece that many of us have had a kind of steep learning curve about, especially since the lockdown, right? And so much more Zoom, is the idea that we couldn't just ask you to read your book on this because of copyright and publishing rights. And so it's your book, but it's not your book, right? Kind of like that right now.
Yes, I would say, people who self-publish their books or are in charge of all the aspects of their book, they get to do, they have more freedom with it. Whatever they would like to do, they can, because it's theirs entirely. But I really love being involved with the publisher because they do the heavy lifting with all of the kind of administrative tasks that go along with publishing a book, whereas I can not do that and work on another book. So that's something that I really enjoy. I just really want to draw and write and talk about it. I love just, chat, like this kind of a thing. I love spending time on that.
Well, and you don't have boxes of 2,000 books in your garage that you have to sell either.
Exactly. And frankly, it's not my strong suit, that kind of stuff. So it's a give and take. There's pros and cons, of course, with both kinds of publishing. So this kind suits me and my abilities and my personality and all that.
There was a question in the question box that somebody wanted to know. They know someone who's a book author whose publisher changed the name of their book. And the question is, has that happened to you? Or do you have any control over the changes that get made?
That is a very good question, and yes, usually the titles. I always expected that my title would get changed because of the needs that publishers have for lots of different reasons, but they never changed my titles. It was so nice. I only was a little funny because we weren't sure if I wanted it to be called Only. There was a little bit of a back and forth about whether that was the right title. But in the end, and I tried different titles, but in the end, we just saw that Only had to be called that. So I've never had a book retitled into anything, which is pretty unbelievable. I never, because I have a lot of other people in my writer cohort that they definitely, the names change, not all the time, but for me, so far, the next book I write is going to have a different title.
Well, not
knocking on wood right now.
I can't
Yes.
wait to read Only. I want to say, I was saying earlier that as it turns out, yesterday was National Introvert Day, so it's exciting that you have a a book coming out. There was this whole thing on YouTube about like, let's make it a whole month. The extroverts have Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's.
I
Let's
think it's
spend a whole month reading.
probably no surprise that it's after the holidays that National Introvert Day falls, because everyone's probably just wiped out having been around so many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very smart. Whoever decided that date.
Airlie, are there other questions you are wondering about with us and what we're doing, or other things you want to share with us about your work?
Oh, I'd love to hear more about what you're doing. I just loved that video. Just seemed so inspiring, and I would like to know what else you're doing. You were telling me about a program with yeah, I would just like to know a little more about what's going on with all of you. That would be great.
Yeah, so Our Whole Lives is a lifespan set of curricula. So we have the K1, that's our youngest level, but we also have curricula for grades 4 through 6, which is pretty puberty heavy. But also has a lot of information in it about relationships and friendships and how those things develop in addition to body changes. And then we have a junior high and a senior high and a young adult, an adult, and even an older adult curriculum. And we also have faith material that goes along with it. So our message is really that sexuality is normal. It's a natural, beloved, sacred part of ourselves, and our relationships are deserve to be celebrated and not shamed and stigmatized, in our bodies as well. And we work to have that message be augmented by our resources and throughout the ages. And we have a lot of the curriculum is most widely used in faith communities in the UUA and the UCC as part of programs that churches do. But there are a handful of schools and some community centers and things that either run a program or use it as a resource. Melanie, would you add anything to that?
Homeschool associations, sometimes individual families who can't access an OWL program will purchase the curriculum for use at home. I think one of the differences with the OWL K1 curriculum that came out in January of this year from previous editions is previous editions had one book for reading at home. And so that the idea of we're supporting parents as their primary sexuality educators. And so these ideas for books are to bring families together in that. But then the second edition has your book and other books that parents can choose, the facilitators can choose to suit the people in their program. And it's a range of books rather than just one book. And I think that that's really important because every family has unique needs. Every child has unique needs and interests. And so being able to find children's books that reflect those differences and uniquenesses is really important. And we are indebted to Marshall Miller and Dorian Solot, the authors of the K-1 curriculum, for doing just a huge amount of research. Dorian, we would meet with Dorian and Marshall and during the creative process of their writing the curriculum, and they'd have piles of books that they took from children's libraries and bookstores to review. And in addition to making those recommendations in the K-1 curriculum, they're also in a video series called Under Your Wing, which Marshall and Dorian are featured in. And they talk about 8 topics that are important topics for parents and kids to talk about. And then they show these books and say, so here's a book to get that conversation started. And anyone can access Under Your Wing on both the UCC and the UUA website.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that illumination.
Yeah.
I'm looking that up right now so we can pop it in the chat.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to what Melanie was saying about books being included in curriculum for a range of ages, and we had been chatting a little bit about how picture books can be for every age, and I was saying how much I love that idea, and I love getting mail from people that tell me that they got the book for themselves, and it's someone who is maybe in middle age or older, or for I did witness one time a middle schooler buying neither in our beloved bookstore in Princeton, Jazam's Books and Toys, and the middle schooler, or I should say a teen, was buying this book for themselves, and it was just so lovely to see that it's not just for little kids. It could be for really anybody who identifies with the message, and you can read it to yourself, and it's okay to read picture books as a grown-up.
Yeah, well, in the Owl for Older Adult curriculum, which is for folks 50 and above, there's a workshop called Family Matters, and it talks about grandparents as sexuality educators as well. And I can see where there can be value for both for grandparents who want to support the children in their families, but also grandparents who need to learn that everything isn't binary, and it never was, but we're recognizing it more and normalizing it and honoring it now.
Yeah. Airlie, I don't know if you're seeing the Q&A, but somebody didn't have a question. They had a comment though that their K-1 Our Whole Lives class this fall really loved acting out the combo characters in the book. So that was fun.
Oh, I love it. I'm not seeing the the Q&A, but maybe I can turn it on so I can see
That's
those.
okay. Well,
yeah, that's wonderful.
We're making sure to lift those up.
Bring them.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and what a great way
great.
to bring more movement into your K-1 class too, you know, to have people act out the different, what would a cat butterfly?
It's just wondering.
Oh, I
What
love
would a
it.
fish do? Yeah. Folks, do you have other questions for us today? I'd love it if you give Airlie some love in the chat here. It's just an amazing opportunity for us to have her here today and to talk about her work and that book that there's lots of hearts coming up now.
I see the hearts. Yay.
Yeah. I think that sometimes when we do this work and we hear the news, and especially this past year, so much legislation around anti-trans, around gender affirming care. Some of it's being overturned now, which is great. But I think that one statistic I heard recently was over 500 laws were proposed and way too many enacted, making things illegal, removing gender affirming care, banning books, not allowing people to discuss things, all those kinds of things. That it can feel like we're swimming upstream when really we're not. Really, there is an amazing community of people who are doing amazing work, and Airlie is one of them. And so I hope that you will support her and buy lots and lots of her books.
Give them
Give
away.
them
like
out to lots and lots of people.
seeds.
And really really remember that we're all a community, and together giving this message of inclusion and love and a place for everyone. And lots of comments in the chat. I hope you're able to see that, Airlie.
I see that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I
You
love
know,
the term
I'm
I love the term neurospicy. I
nervous.
think that's so fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Sorry,
good. Somebody ordered it today.
sorry for the dog in the background, but I was thinking of Dolly Parton, who has given millions of books away. Her goal is to have a book in every child's hands. And I'm just thinking if congregations are looking for service projects for their young people, that giving books, putting books in children's hands is a lovely service project.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're not at the top of the hour, but we're getting closer. I see another question. No, not a question. We do need to collectively push back against conservative think tanks that are formulating and promoting anti-trans and book ban legislation. Yes, and many of us are, and both the United Church of Christ and the Unitarian Universalist Association are doing many things. We have many initiatives. One of the UCC has one called Love is Louder. And there are many ways that we are working on providing support for our trans siblings and non-binary siblings. And I know the UUA has some programs as well.
Yeah, Side
We
with
actually have
Love.
2 webinars about that.
Yeah, so folks, if you look at and Andrea, maybe you could put the UCC's YouTube playlist in the chat. That would be helpful. We did a webinar specifically about what people are doing, boots on the ground kind of work that people are doing to be supportive of the LGBT community. And it was not about children's books. It was more about, heavy duty advocacy. But I think it's important to think that advocacy comes in many forms, and gently sharing messages like this, like Neither, is a really powerful ministry and a powerful form of advocacy that we can engage in.
I've got the link here. I'm typing it in right now. There's the playlist of all of our webinars, and we did one in June this year called Trans Action, and so that is up, and we did one a year before that about a lot of things that the UUA and UCC were doing in terms of supporting folks and what the initiatives that were going on and what we're doing about it. And now out here, it's just sunny on the West Coast today, y'all, because I have sun doing weird things in my background as well. So thank you so much, Airlie. And I want to also just let folks know that in February, we will be at long last discussing the updates to the 10th through 12th grade curriculum, which is now being reviewed and getting into the actual publication process and all those kinds of things. And so we are going to be talking about what some of the changes are, what some of the updates are to that curriculum, so that so you can be aware of that as you go into planning for future 10th through 12th grade Our Whole Lives classes.
And Amy, I want to let people know also that we have a reprint level new editions coming through for 4-6, L 4-6 and 7-9. Now, what it means when it's a reprint level new edition, it means it's not a complete revision. So the activities are the same as they were before, and the workshops are in the same order and the same length as they were before. But we've made a lot of updates in terms of, for example, for 4-6, less binary language. For 7-9, we reviewed all of the links for YouTube things. We made some changes that we felt were important for accessibility and for anti-racism. So if you haven't bought a copy since 2014, when the second edition came up, it would probably be a good idea to invest in this new printing. I don't
Well,
have
once every 10 years, not a bad.
I don't have the PDF in my hot little hand yet, but it will be in my hand soon. So if you pre-order the latest edition, you can get a PDF to use until the hard copy comes out. Airlie was talking about the 6-month process. Well, part of that 6 months is formatting it. And then later on, there's the actual printing of it. So what we're trying to do with these PDFs is make it available to you so you can start using it even before the hard copy is available. Claire, we're getting them as we get them. We will broadcast it broadly when we get it, but if you pre-order from the bookstore, you'll be sure to get that PDF. Amy,
I
do we
believe
want to
the 4 through 6 PDF is available. I believe that one
the
is.
PDF is available now. Yeah, this 7 to 9 is not. We are also close to completing the faith editions of OWL with the UCC faith material. We're no longer going to be calling it OWL and Sexuality in Our Faith. It'll just be OWL standing alone, the secular version, OWL UCC with the faith material incorporated, or OWL UU with the faith material incorporated.
And that's just the K1. That's
K1 so far. And then what's really exciting about that is it will be easier for folks to include faith material when they're, it'll be sort of seamless. It's not going to be the 2 books anymore. It'll be, here's your activities. And oh, by the way, ask this question or read this Bible story or engage in this chalice lighting or prayer. So we are very excited that those will be available soon.
Yeah. So lots of continual updates and in our all community, we are so grateful to each and every one of you for all that you do to provide really good quality sexuality education in your faith communities and in your communities and in your families, and to have the support of wonderful authors like Airlie Anderson in this work to promote the message of love and inclusion for all.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Airlie. We really appreciate your being here with us today, and thank you all for all the wonderful work that you are doing. And we will see you all in February. We hope.
Take care, everybody.
Can I just give a quick shout out?
Yeah,
Sorry.
please.
I just give a quick shout out to our Reverend Jennifer at Unitarian Church of Princeton. She's the one who made this connection, and I just wanted to say thank you, Reverend Jennifer, and we love our congregation in Princeton. So thanks, everyone.
It's a very small UU world because Jennifer Kelleher was my minister at one of my congregations, so it's a small world. And I want to put a plug in, Amy. Amy and I and 2 of our beloved OWL trainers, Anil Uman and Cedric Harmon, will be traveling to Washington at the end of this month to lead a training of OWL trainers. We have 20 wonderful people who will be added to our roster. We're trying over the years to cover more and more of the country so that it's easier for congregations and churches to send folks to trainings. Yeah, that's where we'll be the last week of this month, and we are really excited to work with these folks.
Yeah, we have a great group. So there's more opportunities to host more OWL trainings in more places and get this work out there, and more goodness in the world. More goodness. So
take care, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you so much.